Hello and welcome. I'm Bigfoot, and this is episode 8 of my Let's Play series. Pretty simple start to this episode, because what I need to do, I finish down here, I need to move the camera, I need to fill in some lake, and then I need to copy whatever I've done down here in the top half of my factory. That's what needs to happen. Kind of messed that transition up. There's a little part of me that wants to go back and do it again, but I'm not going to do that. I've got far too much to get on with to be going back and making every shot, every transition frame perfect. Oh, this is the damage from the earlier incursion. Yeah, that's some time ago. I haven't I've left this well alone. Whoops. Oh well. No big loss. Wow, that's a lot of inserters. How many inserters is it this side? 72 times 2 times 14. Just over 2,000 inserters just in this section here. Okay. So it's been a while since I've spoken. It's been about 7 or 8 hours of game time. And that's a couple of reasons. I mean, the first thing is because I'm mostly just copying, or at least I was to start with, I was copying what I've done already, that I spent so much time talking about in the last episode. So there wasn't really much to discuss. So that's all done and dusted. All this side is exactly the same. The other thing, the other reason why it's taking so long, is because I wanted to get the iron down so that I could explain it, because it's much easier to explain with it all down rather than in theory. Okay, so iron has got to do a couple of different jobs. This block's got to satisfy a couple of different things that I want it to do. So the first thing it needs to do is it needs to provide the iron for the green chips. So for that I need 7 blocks of red belt iron plate. Yeah. So that's what these 7 are here for. And that's for the green chips. The second thing it needs to do is it needs to provide, and I'm going to do this second because I always forget about it, it needs to provide iron ore for concrete. And that's something I've forgotten many times on many other bases, so it's always part of my mind. I don't use roboports to transport materials around the factory. There's a few things that I use them for fuel for the trains, for example. That I use robots for, but for materials, always on a conveyor belt, unless it's specific situations. So iron ore, I need it for the concrete. So that's the second thing it needs to do. The third thing is it needs to provide me with steel. It needs to provide enough steel, and what I need is 5 blocks, 5 blue belt blocks. So in order to get that done elegantly, I've done them back to back. So here is the steel block for iron. So that this block produces iron plate, and that goes directly into the steel, and then this will produce the steel plate from the iron over here. So I've got 5 of these blocks. That will produce 1 green belt's worth, 1 blue. Getting all my colours mixed up. 1 blue belt's worth of steel. The other thing it needs to do is it needs to provide iron, and it needs to provide iron in kind of 2 different situations. The first situation is it needs to provide permanent flow of iron for SPM, the iron that goes to the SPM, I want that to be like a priority flow. I don't want it to be mixed with anything else. So these are 2 blocks of iron set out the same way I've set out the steel. So this is one block of 72 furnaces that will give me 1 blue belt of iron plate, and this is another one. And these 2 I'm going to put towards the SPM. So these are going to be specifically directed at the SPM. Then the 2 below it, which is exactly the same, both of these, this is doing the same thing. 72 furnaces giving me iron plate here. This gives me 2 more blue belts of iron plate. The difference is that the iron ore feed for this, I can switch it over to the steel. So whilst I'm building the factory, I can have a bit more iron into the factory so that I can construct all of the things that I need, because I'm going to need a lot of conveyor belts, and I want more iron in my factory. This is something I went through in my evolution of design video. I think in previous versions I've sent all of the iron to my jumble, and then filtered it off to steel from there. But for this one, I'm just doing a few belts worth of extra iron. I'm not doing all of it. There is a limit to how much extra iron is useful. I mean, if you've got 16 blue belts worth of iron plate and you're trying to squeeze that into a few processes in the jumble, it's not gonna work very well. So what I've ended up with is 8 blue belts worth of iron plate, 2 of which are dedicated lines, so those will always give me, or should at least in theory always give me 45 plates. Then I've got 2 which are determined by whether I want it to producing steel or whether I want it to producing iron plate. So those things will go to other things that I want to construct but that aren't SPM related. So that it kind of I can choose which priority belts I use depending on the situation when I get to the jumbo. It just gives me a little bit more flexibility. So those are the several things that this iron block needs to do. And it's just taken a little bit of time trying to squeeze it all in the same amount of space, because I've got this block here is wider because I've got extra belts coming in and out. It's just been a bit of a squeeze trying to work it all out, but it's in there now. I'm happy. It's good. I mean, it is one hell of a bank of furnaces. I suppose it's been 7 or 8 hours. What else has moved on in that time? Okay, so what I've also discovered is, because, well, not necessarily discovered, what I've come to the conclusion is that I need more landfill to fill in my damn ocean. So I've requisitioned another patch of stone to create more landfill. I've had to reinforce this whole perimeter wall, so that I've got enough stone. This one is starting to deplete, not necessarily deplete, but you can see that the redness, the red mines around it, its production is slowing. So I think it's useful to have a second one, because I'm going to need to fill in all of this and all of this. Oh, maybe, yeah, all of this needs to be filled in. Okay, all right. This is a good place to go, actually. So here's the base as it stands. It's pretty big. So I mean, there's the little starter base. I mean, when I did that, it looked huge, and now this is the steel. So an iron. This is the first block, and then I can get on with the jumble, which was going to go up here. You know, if I go through the original storyline, that was the original set out. That was here is the block for iron, steel, and the computer chips. Jumble goes here. Steam engine, steam power goes up here. Science down here, and then oil down here, and then uranium power over here. It is kind of coming together. In terms of racetrack, this is I'll go through that. It's not a bad place to do it. So track number 1 is just going to be a simple loop. So it's going to go around here, it's going to come here, and then it's going to come down here, like so. It's going to be an oval. Track number 2 will be the same oval, except it will come around here, and then down here, and then here. Just be a little bit of an extension, not too much, just a little bit more interesting than a loop. Track number 3 will come around here to this junction, do the same, come around this loop around here, and then come up, and then it'll have to come down some other ways and come around here, and then it'll come in through here. That's the plan. It is all coming together. What I need to do now is I need to zoom out the camera so that I can get all of this in shot, so that I can fill in this lake, finish off this corner, and then I can finally deal with the bus once and for all. Once I've got everything planned for this, I think I can get the bus perfect the way that I want it. I'm glad that I haven't done it yet. I could have forced myself into some corners that would be quite time consuming to get myself out of it. So that's the plan. Move the camera out. Yep. So just a bit more detail about my iron and steel setup. Okay, so I've got in total requirements for this whole block. I've got 7 blocks of red ore over here for my green chips. I've got 2 blocks of blue iron ore that I need for my permanent iron plate setup. Let me just check this for a second. Oh, okay. Every time you catch me when I'm talking. How dare you? Yeah, I've got you now, look. So that's 4 incursions, 2 of which, oh, you're gonna get it, 2 of which were while I was talking. The barefaced cheek. Okay, so as I was saying, total iron steel requirements. I've got 7 red belts of iron over here. I've got 2 blue belts of iron over here for my permanent SPM. And we're just talking permanent SPM case here. And then I've got 5 blocks of iron that I need for my steel. So in total I've got 14 blocks. So that means that I need 14 belts out of here, which is obviously completely ruinous for my the maths that I'd like to have on this sort of situation. So if you can see, I've done the same again. I've done the same 6 belts. These are all going to be upgraded to blue at some point. These aren't going to stay as red belts. These are going to upgrade as blue. So I've got 6 blue belts worth coming into the junction. Ignore the colours. The colours are essentially just me so that I can notate which ones are going which way. So the red belts, they're going to stay red belts. They don't need to be upgraded. They're going to go left and feed the 7 blocks over here for the green chips. The yellow belts will be eventually upgraded to blue and will come right. So if you see, I've interlaced them because obviously I've got 30 and 45. So I want to average that out so that each side is roughly the same. And in order to achieve that, I've kind of interspliced the 7 belts that I need. So the 6 belts input, they've got this gap down the middle. And then I'm hoping that through these splitters, if I can add more splitters if need be, that it will fill up these belts. In terms of input output, 7 blue belts, 6 blue belts in is more input than what both of these can output. So it shouldn't bottleneck. All of this should work out fine. But the fact that the numbers don't work out just make me a little bit uneasy. But another one of these junctions, I've got the same at the top. This is another one of my kind of junctions that I like to do, where just by selecting which belts the right order, you can make them all come out in the right way in a nice sequence. Just pleasing. Just very, very pleasing. There is another bank of furnaces sorted. Well, I've got to do the inserters and the power, and I've got to do all the plumbing. I've got to get all the inputs and outputs, a whole load of stuff. Okay, so halfway there. It's halfway there. It's in the place. It's in the position. That's all that matters for this time being. What I wanted to say was that because I've had to squeeze all of this in such a tight space, I've ended up with these really horrible little kinks in the conveyor belts. Now, if I had a little bit more space, I mean, you can see that these two blocks, there's no space available between me two. If I had a little more space, then I would spread this out a little bit and make sure that this wasn't. But it is what it is. That's what needs to happen in order to get it to work. So I've got these kinks, I've got this one over here. It's just what needs to happen to get it to work. It's just something needs to kink. Anyway, the thing is, by lining 5 of them up next to each other, it kind of looks it kind of looks acceptable, you know, because I've copied it 5 times. It kind of looks like it's okay, and that's something that I've noticed with this thing, with building in Factorio. Sometimes, if you copy something over and over again, it has an elegance to it. So that was I just wanted to say that. You know, not all of this works out perfectly. I mean, this is one of those cases, like I was talking about earlier, where the requirements from the factory is more than the elegance that I can achieve. Although I'm looking at it now and I can achieve an elegance. I'm not going to do it. I'm not even going to talk about it. But okay, I'm going to talk about it. So I could bring this one over here, move this red one down, and then this wouldn't kink, and this one would only kink 2 instead of 3. So I'm not going to do it because I'd have to do it 5 times. I have to do it 10 times, including the ones above. I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm definitely not going to do that. There's doubt in my voice, but it's definitely not going to happen. Alright, so I need to get some inserters on here. That's what I need to do. Okay, so that's half of them done. 1,000 of the little blighters down on the map, and the biters are really just getting under my skin. Just get really annoying. This is unusual for a couple of really strange reasons. Right, so my normal level of difficulty on these maps in terms of biters is to set them about 200 to 250, 300%, that sort of range, depending on the type of map that I'm doing. Like I set them higher for the ribbon and the spiral because it's, you know, there just aren't any of them on the maps. But when I set up this one, my mind was so focused on the Let's Play and the time lapse and getting everything else set up and explaining myself, and it was a whole new experience, that I completely forgot to up the ante with the biters. It took about 10-15 hours into the game before I kind of realised, went back, watched the opening footage of me setting up the game and I actually made a little video of my frustration when I discovered. But I decided not to put it in the video because I thought, well, you know, I've never made any claims as to what the biter levels were at. And if you're watching this, you're probably not watching it for how I deal with the biters. That's not why you're probably watching it for other reasons, I'm guessing. So I just kind of left it the way that it was. I mean, how I set the game up, that was all in the opening video. So if you wanted to see how I set it up, you could see it. I wasn't hiding anything. Anyway. So the biter levels were meant to be, or at least I thought they were going to be much lower than I normally experience. However, because I've got this huge lake, and I'm having to mine all of this stone to fill this lake, ocean thing, I've got all of this attention, and this is attention that I wouldn't ordinarily get, because normally at this point in time the whole factory is switched off. There's no noise. I'm not getting any attention. Normally at this point in the game, it's just a free run. I can just build away, build to my heart's content until I reach a point where I want to turn it on. And that's normally at the stage where I've at least plumbed in things like laser turrets, so that I can research laser turrets and pretty much construct them instantly. The moment I switch on the factory, I want access to my laser turrets because I want to start upgrading my perimeter walls, and then I'll probably want to upgrade the weapons for the further systems, the further research, the further technology that will be available to me once I've got the further science that I've got will have constructed at the moment that I switch it on. So normally at this moment in time is quiet, and I can work away and, you know, do my little thing and not have to worry about them so much. And I thought that was going to be even more the case because of the way that I inadvertently set up the biters, but it's turned out to be the complete opposite. Because of this freaking lake. Just because of this freaking lake, that's the only thing. And I don't think I've been racking my memory for other bases where I've come across this sort of situation where a ginormous patch of water is in the way, and I don't think I can think of one. I think this is the first time that I've encountered a patch of water. I mean, it's remarkably close to my starter base. I mean, it's right in the starting area. So anyway, that's where we are with the biters. That's the normal situation. Dealing with so much attention at this point in time, it's really, really annoying me. Really annoying me. Anyway, let's finish off these inserters. Okay, so that's all the inserters done. I've obviously still got to power it all up, but I'm not doing that today. I'm not doing that today. Now, my original intention at this point was to end the episode. It's been a lot of game time since I released the last episode. Where are we? We're at just over 75 hours. So, what's that? 17 hours since my last Let's Play episode. But the problem is I haven't been talking very much, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. And the next thing is the bus. That's what I need to sort out now. And I know that out there in YouTube world, there's a lot of videos about how to build a bus. And I've never watched any of them. I don't really understand why they're there. For me, a bus is almost obvious. It's got to feed certain resources. Those resources got to get from A to B. You've got a certain amount of conveyor belts. But anyway, I've basically got this blank slate which I can do more or less what I like with. And although as I've said many times, although what I want might not necessarily happen, what I want is what I'm going to aim for first of all. So obviously I'm going to have the two main buses for the water barrels. They're going to need to come through first. Well, actually, I need to do all the railways first. But if we're just talking about the bus, I need to bring the water barrels through first, and then as part of that, there's the steel. So that's going to be where the steel is. That's so I can make the barrels in the first place. So the steel will come out, and that will just tee off and go left and right both ways. Iron is probably the next thing I want to deal with after that, and that's mainly because at the end of the map is going to be my nuclear power, and I really want the iron and the sulfuric acid to be close to the center, just so it works out neater. I've had it before where the iron's been out here somewhere. It's been out in no man's land. It's just looked messy. So I want to bring out iron first, just so that it can come all the way through and go right the way through to nuclear power when it gets there. And because I've got iron that goes both ways, I'm going to have 7 iron belts that come this way for green chips. And they're going to come in and come to here and then come down or up. And then the copper is going to come and occupy the same space in the bus. That's going to come across and come down and come up. Then there's going to be more copper that overlaps, so that the rest of the iron should come out and occupy will occupy less space than the iron that's going to the green chips. So that's that block in the bus occupied. Then the copper, other than that's going to the green chips, will come out and go either to the red chips, or it will carry on coming just above, or just kind of, if we're dealing with the bottom half of the bus, it will be just below the iron. Then I'll deal with the chips, and somewhere along the ways I'm going to have to fit in plastic, sulfuric acid, fuel, and no, that's it. No, that's it. But before I can get started on any of that, I need to commit once and for all to a railway network. Still not fully convinced by what I've done over here. I've got a second crack at it here to see if I can build something that I prefer, and then I can compare the two. That's what I'm going to do now. Obviously, once I've got the railway line down, and overlaid all of the conveyor belts. I don't really want to move or change it. Particularly when I start putting barrels on. Barrels, if you start picking up and moving barrels, they occupy all of your inventory. They only occupy 10 per block in your inventory. So you start playing around with conveyor belts and barrels, very, very quickly you'll fill up your inventory. It becomes a complete nightmare. So I don't want to change any of that. Once it's down, it's down. I'm committed. So, railway lines. Okay, I am happy. I can't precisely tell you why I'm happy, but there's a feeling in my gut, and I like it. It's a good feeling. I've put a train there just to give you some idea of scale. So that's my standard train. It's not the right configuration, but the length is correct. So I've got enough space for a train to land in some of these places to get it out of the way so that other trains can go around. I think the scale is correct. I think the layout is correct. It looks good. One change I wanted to make, obviously I've got the racetrack here. And if we look on the map over on this other side, I had the same problem. The racetrack right butting up against this left-hand edge of the train stations. So I wanted to move it all, or as much of it inboard, or as close to inboard as I could get it, to get this line here over on this side. So if we go and have a look, that's what I've tried to do. That's as close as I can get it without ruining the way that the trains work. It's going to need a little kink in the racetrack, but you know, that's not the end of the world. I have to live with that. So this new arrangement, I think this new arrangement is infinitely better than that one that I've got over there. They're not a million miles away from each other, but they're... Anyway, I'm happy. Can't exactly tell you why. I do know that these train networks tend to... People get very particular about them. I just like to listen to my gut. Okay, let's start feeding the stuff through. Okay, so here we are in the bus. It's taken a long old time to get here. My starter base is not producing anywhere near enough red belts, and it's kind of bottlenecked me a little bit. I've managed to work around it. It's not too bad. But this is the key junction for me in this whole bus. This is kind of the key. This is what kind of worked the whole geometry of this whole place, this whole starter bit, this iron, steel, and the chips and the copper. It's this junction here. It's all really kind of geared towards getting this junction. So obviously I've got the copper coming across, and that comes down into green chips, and then I've got the iron coming across, and that goes down into green chips, and they occupy the same space in the bus. Now obviously if I'd arranged this differently with, say, copper, then the iron and steel, and then the computer chips, then these group of belts would have had to come across and occupy a similar sort of space in the bus. Now I know this space is blank, but this is blank for a reason. That's the space that I wanted to leave blank for my railway. So this isn't space I want to use in the bus, or this is space I've specifically left aside. So just because of the way that I've set things out, I've got this arrangement where these two buses occupy the same. These two kind of little buses for the green chips occupy the same space in the main bus. And you could ask, what's the point? You've spent a lot of time and effort making just this one collection of belts work, and that's not a terrible point of view. My argument would be, well, if all of this stuff in this is required, it's needed, it has to go somewhere, so why not arrange it in such a way that makes that uses a good efficiency of space in the bus. That's kind of what I'm trying to. That's, you know, that efficiency is the whole efficiency of space thing. That's it kind of governs my thinking in lots of different ways, not just in the ways that I've discussed up to now. In addition, by if we move our way across the map, this is the iron and steel. So this is the iron that goes to the green chips, and then this is the iron and steel that goes into the main factory. And you can see that these belts, once again, occupy the same space as those belts that we were just talking about. So I kind of get 3 for 1 value in this arrangement. That's the way that I see it. I'm able to use this space in the bus 3 times. You know, if I had to, if I set it up differently, I would have to have those extra belts. I'd need a wider bus. Just by having a careful arrangement of this particular part of the factory, I'm able to conserve space in the bus, and that pleases me. Does it produce anything extra in the factory? No, not at all. But it means that this is less wide. I mean, you know, if this was, if I'd actually done it the other way round with the extra space in the bus would have come out here. There would have been more gaps in the bus. At the moment, it's pretty well populated. There's not a lot of space left over. And that's probably another point. That's a good time to mention that, you know, this space that I'd left for myself for the bus, it was more than I needed. Specifically because I needed to move this path so that it missed this collection of, I may not have rebuilt them, but there's a collection of underground belts over here that I needed the path to miss so that the underground belt still worked. So I had to move it out 4 or 5 tiles. And by moving it out 4 or 5 tiles, it's given me a lot more space to manage all of this stuff than I needed. So there's bigger gaps than I probably set out when I originally intended. I think when I set out my bus, I just used the minimum amount of space that I required with less elegance gaps. That's probably what I'm calling. That's what I'd call these, with less elegance gaps. I didn't plan it out to have this many, but because I had this extra space in the bus, I've just used that space to make it a little bit more elegant. A couple of other things that I've tried to do. If we look over here, we've got this complete monstrosity of splitters. And I'm kind of trying to achieve what I was doing with the iron and steel, in that I'm trying to extract a few more of my green chips that would for an SPM purpose need to go to blue chips. But, you know, blue chips might be a long way away. They might be some time before I get there. The idea of having more green chips coming into the factory, in the meantime, that I like that idea. And this can feed my jumble in much the same way that I've got those 2 extra belts of 4 extra belts of iron plate if you include the top and the bottom half. So what I've ended up with is 5 belts of green chips, and I'm trying to make those 5 belts into 3, and that's why I've got this monstrosity of splitters. I'm just trying to add extra capacity in, so as long as I get the 3 belts out that minimum, then I'm happy. I won't get 5 belts worth, but I'll definitely get 3. That's the way I look at it. I've also added in some more lanes. So I've obviously got paths and these lanes either side for electricity and roboports. And I've kind of tried to extend them into the main part try to extend them through the bus. It's not particularly relevant here because that's a main path, so I've got the electricity and roboports either side. This is the racetrack, but I've added these lanes here. One thing I found in other factories is that these buses are just absolutely impenetrable to robots. So I've started to construct specific lanes. I mean, I know I've got the racetrack and the paths help this kind of this aim, but I've also added extra ones. So you can see I've got one here that I've added, another one here, and I've got a few more over here as well, just to give my robots a bit more freedom to travel over the bus. Not absolute freedom, like this isn't going to be jam-packed with robot ports. It's not going to be completely connected, but it will do the job. It will be enough. So that's probably that for the bus. Now, before I sign off for the episode, there was one topic of conversation I just wanted to get to, and that was why I'm doing a racetrack in the first place. I have had a few comments. Not necessarily negative comments, but, you know, more kind of just why bother? What's the point? Why not just make a normal base? And the first reason for that, the first reason is because this is a real challenge. It's a much more of a challenge trying to work. I mean, I'm making a normal base. This is a base, a perfectly respectable base, SPM base. Elegance wise, it's going to look good. I think it's going to be a good base in total. And I really like a challenge. I mean, it really is that simple. I like to do difficult things. It pleases me to take on things that are a little bit more difficult. And that's kind of the first reason. The second reason is because I'm a big Formula One fan. I love Formula One. I follow it avidly. And if someone made a game where I could design a racetrack and then race around it, I would play that game and then manage that racetrack, and that would be cool. I think I would get a kick out of playing that game, but there isn't that game available. So Factorio has got all of the main base game elements that are required for a racetrack. It's got a car, it's got tarmac, it's got walls, the capability to have a timing loops, and I've done that, and I know where I'm going with that. I'm going to use switches. It's got all of the elements that are needed for a racetrack. So because I haven't got that game, that racetrack designing game, this is my outlet, and I get to make an awesome factory at the same time. Now, to put this into some sort of context, I have a workshop at the bottom of my garden, and I like to do a bit of carpentry every now and then. This is completely off topic, and there's a reason why I'm putting it at the end of episode 8 as kind of a little Easter egg. It's because I didn't really want to include it earlier. So what I'm about to show you is something that I made to put in my front room. And to give you context, I don't really have a proper camera. This video was filmed so that I could show it off to my friends and family. So don't expect any miracles. I had to gaffer tape my phone to a chair, so if you hear some rumbling around, that's me dragging the chair around on the floor. And the final thing, you're going to get to see my ugly mug. I'm not really happy about that, and that's another reason why I'm putting it at the end of the episode. I don't really want that stuff out there. But at the end of this, hopefully, with only maybe a couple of hundred views, it won't matter in the grand scheme of things. So here is something that I made that's outside of Factorio, just to give you some idea of how much I really like racing. Hello everyone, so this is my coffee table all finished. Just take you through it. So I've got all the wires in here. All the wires. And then we've got a little virtual reality slot for the virtual reality, so you just plug it in. And then we've got finished. I suppose I'll sit in it. Hey. So that's why I'm doing a racetrack. I'm a bit of a racing nut. I do like my racing games. And the idea of doing a racetrack in Factorio, which is without question my favourite game of all time. I mean, there's no doubt in that. The idea of doing a racetrack is just very, very appealing. So I suppose don't be surprised if in a few months' time I start up a second YouTube channel for my carpentry. That's been on the books for quite some time. I've got a script going. I've got at least one script going. That's coming. Yeah. So that's it. That's it for today. I hope it's been interesting. Till next time.